Good morning. It's a brisk autumn's morning here in New Zealand. My fingers are actually really freezing. I probably should have put my gloves on. I realised it would be so cold. That rumble you can hear in the distance is actually the local coal mine, and it is quite a wee way from here. But because it's so still, I think it's so misty, the noise is carrying across the valley. So normally I can come here and it's very quiet, very still, and that's the reason I come, because it's so peaceful, quiet, no people, just still, restful. There's some very old headstones here too, well over 100 years old, which is old for New Zealand. But I guess they don't get visitors anymore, so they probably appreciate a bit of visit by somebody. There's a lot of lichen and moss growing on some of the headstones, so nobody's left to tell their story, so nobody really knows what they did or who they were anymore. I just wander down here. This cemetery sits between the two villages. There's about an 8-kilometre distance between the two, so you will hear a lot of farm trucks and things going past as well in the background, because it's our harvest time, being autumn. I actually brought you up here because I wanted to share a story with you about what happens when the soul leaves the body at the point of death. And I have seen many stories on YouTube, and I've seen or heard people tell, how the body lays there and then the soul lifts, like levitates out of it, and then looks down at itself, then goes or returns or whatever happens at that time. But my experience was a little different, and I want to share my experience with you, because I'm not sure if the soul, when it left its body, this, as I'm about to tell you, was because of the trauma rather than a peaceful exit. Anyway, it happened a few decades ago, and I'd gone to bed per usual, and I'll just turn so you can see some daisies. I'd gone to bed, and next thing you know, I was aware of myself lying horizontal, about head height, behind a man, probably in his 50s, running down a suburban street. And it was kind of like twilightish, so there was a street light, but it wasn't quite dark, so it would have been about 10 o'clock. And he was chasing a youth, a very thin, short youth. And I remember feeling great concern for this man. And then the youth stopped, and he turned to face the man. So the man rushed up to him and grabbed him, and as he grabbed him, the boy stabbed him, the youth stabbed him, turned and ran off. Now I recognised the boy as someone I'd gone to school with, actually. And the man dropped to his knees, and he's on the footpath on his knees, and the family whose house had happened outside ran out of the house. There was the mum, the dad, and the 3 teenage children. And they ran out of the house, and the woman picked up the guy's head, and the guy was now laying on the footpath, and she was cradling his head and trying to keep it up, and he was gurgling, and you could hear him drowning in his blood. And I was standing at his feet in an ether form, and I could see that I was in an ether form, and they couldn't see me, but I was well aware of what was going on because I could see them. And then out of the top of the man's head, the fontanel, came this white mist, and it came and it stood beside me at his feet, and I recognised it as the man. It was his soul, and it's looking at the body, who's now not breathing, so it's definitely dead, and he's looking at the body in surprise, and then it turns and it looks at me, and I think to it, "You're dead, you can go home now." And it just went whoosh and up into the sky, about as high as the power lines, and disappeared. And then I woke up the next morning, so I don't remember anything else after that, and I woke up and I thought it was a bit bizarre, because I remember it being a very vivid, intense, like I was experiencing it rather than dreaming it. So I got up and I told my mother and my grandmother, who were both alive at the time, about it in the kitchen when I was having breakfast. And then shortly after that, the news came on and they said there had been a murder on a suburban street in Mangere. And we all sort of looked at each other and thought, well, it's a bit spooky. I actually told them the name of the boy that had committed the murder too. And I said, this is even going to be more spooky if it turns out to be him. Well, about an hour or a bit later, the phone rings. And it's my auntie to tell my mother that her friend had been involved in this murder, that her friend had had a man murdered outside her house on the footpath. And she told it word for word exactly how I had relayed it, and she even named the boy that had done the murder because he was a local lad. It was exactly how I'd seen it. The soul came out of the fontanel of his head and landed at his feet. So my experience was different than the graceful leaving of the body. And I don't know whether that's because he died in trauma or whether that's what the fontanel does. Perhaps that's where the soul comes in and the soul leaves. So I thought I'd share that with you, and it's food for thought. And if you've got some thoughts on that as to why he chose that way, or maybe there's various ways that the soul can leave the body, I appreciate your thoughts, because it has bothered me for years. And yes, they did arrest the boy the same day, I think it was, for the murder of the man. So, yeah. So anyway, you have a nice day. I'm going to go home now and light the fire because my fingertips are freezing cold. And I might go do some painting. So I'll see you later. Bye for now.